to have this event right before Thanksgiving and then a subsequent event in a few hours for the young alumni, the ones that are currently in college, where they just enjoy a luncheon together and seeing one another again. I think Jody Johnson's office sent out a note, but I'll remind you as well that following this event, our football team will be out practicing. If you want to just see them for a few minutes, just go out to the field and enjoy that as well. Well, this is, I hope, a meaningful and not long program, but one that I hope you will remember. We'll start, as we do a lot of the programs, with some music. And so I'm grateful for our headmaster singers getting up on their first day of Thanksgiving vacation at 7:30 or whatever time you guys got here. Thanks for being here. They're going to sing a song called Poor Wayfaring Stranger. Thank you guys again for being up early. One of the soloists, Aiden, who's the second one walking out, is going to sing the national anthem at the state championship game next Thursday night. And we're glad to have home field advantage, even though it's in Chattanooga. But we are the home team since our record is the first seed. I'm just going to give you a brief update on the school. Most of you kind of stay pretty tuned to what's happening at NBA, but I thought maybe I'd just begin by saying it's impossible for me not to come to events like this one and think, well, this is the last time I'm going to do this kind of event. But rather than kind of sentimentalize like that, I've really tried to train myself to say you just want to really enjoy every opportunity and every day. And that is honestly the way I've looked at it. And it's been a great journey to see NBA through the prism of 29 years, which, you know, is 156 years, so not quite 20% of NBA's existence I've been able to watch and be part of. But when I came, as a lot of you know, there were 535 students. Now there are 835 students. There are 20 acres on the campus, 30. And now the campus here has 50. There's another 10 in Sylvan Park and another 200 plus on a mountaintop. So now we kind of work with about 250 plus acres. The faculty and staff has enlarged from about 75 to 160. The budget has mushroomed tremendously from about 6-7 million to 32 million. The endowment's grown from 20 million to 100 plus another 20 million that we reserve for the Wilson grants. Annual fund has gone from $230,000 to just over 4 million this past year. You know, so it's easy and fun to think about statistics. But there's no question that if there's any area of the school that I've been more interested in, especially as time evolved, it's the culture. And I was sort of smiling inwardly yesterday at Grandparents' Day because the grandparent chairs, Jane and Bill Coble. In fact, I realized it was probably time to retire because I dated Jane Coble's sister when I was a freshman in college. But they talked about the culture. They've got a grandson. They've got 3 grandsons here now, but a senior who is one of the better varsity football players. But they relish art and music and theater and debate, and they talked about that. And I think the culture is at a point where nobody needs in some ways to steer it, but you do have to always steer it. You have to be intentional about it. But it's now in the mouths and spirits and hearts of the boys and of their parents and of their grandparents, as evidenced yesterday. So the school's in great shape. I mean, you know, this weekend I went to a play that was really good here. I got texts from our debate coach about how we had 3 teams in the final rounds of one of the biggest tournaments in the country. The football team won the state semifinals. You know, you love that kind of balance, but more importantly, you just love to see boys on a daily basis enjoying themselves, working hard, knowing that there's a bigger purpose than themselves, and that is always in evidence here. So the school's in great shape, and now I want to turn our attention to recognizing 2 individuals today, David Toon and Rabbi Fred Guttman. First, I'm going to talk about David, and I asked one of, well, I did it because I'm going to ask David Toon to come up. Well, we kind of did recognize David Toon the other day, didn't we, when we had him speak at Veterans Day? But my slip on David Toon is that Rabbi Guttman's brother Gary is going to make some comments about him, and I thought, well, we'll have some parody, so I'll ask one of David Ingram's friends to make some comments about him to start us off. And David is no stranger to this microphone the last couple of weeks because he came over for Veterans Day and did a wonderful job. But I know he's been a long-term friend of David Ingram's. And so I asked him if he would please come over this morning and just make a few comments about him. So join me in welcoming David Toon to the podium.
And the reason I know that, when you have had the privilege of witnessing someone's life from age 6 to 60, and he'll be 60 in 2 weeks, you have a unique opportunity to see what formulates who they are. Some people may think that they garner most of their traits through inheritance, whether traits or opportunities. But David's truest, greatest trait to me is his love for people, his love in helping people, his love in giving a golfer from Central America, from a janitor here to a jurist in the Court of Appeals. David has silently helped more people than I know and have met over that 60 years of our friendship, or 56 years. And that's a privilege to see someone who is that committed. The reason it's important today is I've watched his stewardship in the role as chairman here, and many of those milestones which Brad spoke, David is partially, or in some ways completely, responsible for. And I hope that you will judge him knowing that that trait in him was not inherited or bequeathed to him. It was something he created from his own volition from the time we were in kindergarten at Innsworth. And I saw it in action just 2 days ago with him helping yet another stranger, relative stranger. And he applied it every day when he was here as chairman. So David, my hat's off to you. Thank you for being my friend, but more importantly, a friend to this place, with your resources, your mind, and your conviction that the culture here does absolutely matter. Thanks.
Thank you, David, too. It's been great to know both of these Davids well over the years, and appreciate your coming this morning and talking about David, who graduated from MBA, David Ingram, in 1981, and then matriculated at Duke, finishing there in 1985. We have some nice sort of rivalry talking about Duke because he's well aware that our daughter went to North Carolina, but I don't think he's ever forgiven her for doing that. But it's been a great journey to work with and to know David. Following graduation from Duke, David worked 2 years, I believe, in their advancement development office. And I was thinking this morning he did that probably primarily to be around his wife, Sarah. And then he, future wife, yes. And then he moved down back to Nashville and started Owen. And then he started working at Ingram Industries as assistant to the treasurer. And then when Ingram sort of split up, his father had passed away, I think David knew himself really well and thought, I'm going to have to be on my own, and had the conviction and courage to do so, and then ran Ingram Entertainment, which he grew. And then when he saw the kind of complexity in the market for Ingram Entertainment, he developed the company to become DBI Beverage as well, which basically was a separate company that held assets of 10 California beer-based distributorships, and it became was the second largest distributing company in California. And that was about 20 years ago, I believe, in 2002 or so, that David pioneered that purchase. He sold that company and has now found a variety of endeavors, as David Toon was commenting on. But he really since around 95, he's been part of the MBA board, and for 9 years he led the board as chairman and did a magnificent job in always showing that he loved the school and that he would both give his resources and heart and spirit to what would make MBA the best place it could be. And I always knew that. And some people would say, you know, David's a pretty opinionated person. And I'd say, well, I think I know David well, but what I know best is that he really loves the school. He loves the ways in which it prepares students. He loves the focus on character. He loves the ways in which it has had an impact on the Nashville community and beyond. And I think he's treasured, I know he treasures those aspects of the school. And for that and for many more reasons, we wanted to recognize him today with this Distinguished Service Award. So please join me in thanking David Ingram.
Well, when Brad asked me to come here today and be in this role, I said, do I have to? I don't really like to be honored. But I'm thankful because he said I didn't have to give a speech, so here I am giving a speech. But in the spirit of Thanksgiving, I want to talk a little bit about what I'm thankful about, and one is of having a great friend like David Toon. David's been my friend since practically my self-awareness came about when I was a little boy. And David, my family and I call him the most interesting man, kind of like the guy in the beer commercial, because David has done some just phenomenally interesting things in life, some of which are so secret he can't tell you about them. But my wife calls BS on some of the stories, and I said, no, it's real, and then we'll corroborate. It's like, no, he really did do that. So David's a pretty amazing guy. Another person to be thankful for is Brad Joya. To be board chair for 9 years, kind of hand in hand with Brad Joya, it's been just a great experience. Brad is totally on top of his game. He has known all the levers to pull and push at the school, and the school has thrived under his leadership. I can't believe that he actually called me David Toon early on. I think that's the first mistake I've ever heard him make. But I personally have never made a mistake. Once I thought I had, but I was wrong. But and opinionated, maybe I'm a little opinionated, but usually I've got the right thinking. And one of the thinkings I have is that Brad is a phenomenal leader, and we're going to really miss him at MBA. Other things to be thankful for are my son Henry, who's up here. My other son Bronson wasn't able to make it. I'm very thankful for my family, my wife Sarah, and I'm very thankful for everybody in the room that supports MBA, and I hope you'll continue to support MBA under Bill Carpenter's leadership. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate you very much. Our next honoree spends about half the year in Greensboro, North Carolina, and the other half of the year in Israel. And he actually flew in from Israel to be at MBA this week. I guess you came in Sunday or Monday. And he was kind enough to be at school yesterday. And that was a gift for me personally, because it was the first time I'd been around him. We had talked by phone and email, but never in person. And he took it upon himself to work with students all day long. And I loved watching him because he related so beautifully to the students. The beginning of the day, I sat in a room with about 50 to 100 students, and he talked about Warsaw in 1943 and the concentration camps and what it felt like, what it must have felt like to be a young man or teenager in those concentration camps, and he used the metaphors of what it would be like to be a bystander or an upstander, somebody who just watched versus somebody who decided to take some action. And he continued that conversation and dialogue with students throughout the morning, talking about the book Night, talking about probably as much as anything, how they see themselves in taking care of others and building a better society. And Fred, that was a privilege to hear you and to watch you and to get to know you better in that sense. And so also I was glad to be able to be around you yesterday, because I knew that your brother Gary was going to do the more formal introduction of you this morning, because he and I had talked. And in fact, I did get to know Fred through his brother actually over the years, and I've never had such a outpouring of interest of people that wanted you to get this recognition this morning. Beautiful letter after letter after letter, highlighting why you are so deserving. And we're not the first place to recognize you, but we're certainly glad to be in that company. So I'm going to ask Gary now to come up. Gary's class of 1979, and he wanted to honor his brother on this Thanksgiving week.
Brad, thank you for your friendship over these years and for your service to MBA, and for letting me introduce this year's Alumnus of the Year award winner. Excuse me. How do you measure the number of souls impacted by your work? How do you measure the change that you make in people's lives? And how do you measure how your teachings encourage people to act? Most of us work in a business environment, and there is no way to answer these questions. We can't fathom the demands or the experiences for someone in the clergy. But for the next couple of minutes, I want you to try. So imagine writing a theme for Ms. Lowry every week for 35 years. 35 years for Ms. Lowry, okay? But not turning that theme in for a grade, but speaking it aloud to a group this size or larger, or turning it in for an article in a newspaper. Imagine you are a teacher, and you need to prepare lesson plans for a first grader, seventh graders, seniors in high school, parents with young children, empty nesters, and senior citizens, all at the same time. Imagine developing music programs for these same age groups while playing the guitar and the piano and leading people in song. Imagine 5 years of graduate school and another 3 years to receive your doctor in divinity. Imagine 12 years as a teacher or principal of a high school, and then 30 years as a rabbi, 26 of those as the head rabbi in Greensboro, North Carolina. Imagine having a week of vacation and not escaping your job, but rather going to a training seminar because learning is just part of your life. Imagine serving in a combat unit in the Army. Imagine eating dinner with your family and hearing that a congregant is in the hospital. The irony of your job is telling parents to be at home with their family, but then leaving your family to help someone else in a time of crisis. Imagine standing with the parents over the dead body of their daughter who died in a car accident, or with officiating the funeral of a 23-year-old man who died of a fentanyl overdose. Imagine creating a celebration for Dr. Martin Luther King that brings together clergy and congregants from a variety of religions to help everyone understand and respect each other. Imagine leading groups of students, teachers, clergy, to Poland 19 different times to teach about the history of the Holocaust. Imagine comforting a 7th grade girl who was told in school that it's too bad she didn't die in the gas chambers like other students and other Jews. Imagine working in a profession that doesn't have any real opportunity for national recognition, but being one of 4 clergy to lead the marchers at the 49th anniversary of Bloody Sunday on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Alabama, and then a year later, leading the 50th anniversary celebration and organizing the National Jewish Commemoration in Selma. Imagine receiving the Lifetime Community of Service Award from the International Civil Rights Museum for your life's work. But I also want you to think about the darker side of the response to your work. Imagine going to work every day and having police or security, not because you want to prevent theft, but because you want to stop someone with a gun or a bomb, like what happened at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh in 2018, the Colesville Synagogue in Dallas in 2021, the bombing of the Nashville Jewish Community Center in 1958, or the thwarted bombing at the Temple Synagogue less than 2 miles away from here in the 1970s, when most of us, or many of us, were students here. Imagine being the only one on your street whose mailbox is destroyed by vandalism on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish New Year. Imagine receiving frequent and threatening and insulting emails and anonymous letters. Imagine calling the police because of death threats from people who don't like you because of your religion, your teachings, or your calls for social justice. Imagine being told by the police that you should remove the sign for Rabi from your parking lot and that you should park in a different spot every day in order to protect yourself. Imagine the fear of realizing that these threats also put your congregants, your wife, and your children at risk. But then also imagine having a wife and 3 children who, despite all of these conflicts and all of these threats and all of this work that you do, that they still love and respect you. But I also want you to think about the positive things that come from what you do. Imagine celebrating hundreds of births, bar mitzvahs, weddings, anniversaries, and other joyous life events. Imagine leading people in prayer and in song. Imagine helping people find their spiritual place in this world. Imagine helping someone find a job, being a matchmaker, and helping them to vote. And imagine working with couples to help make their lives and their relationships better. And finally, imagine being an 18-year-old high school student and having your 9-year-old younger brother sleep in the extra bedroom in your room every night because he was just too scared to sleep alone. And then imagine officiating at his wedding many years later. You combine all of these activities and you have the role of rabbi, teacher, social justice advocate, and brother. Some of us are lucky enough to find a job we love, but few of us have a calling to teach everyone to treat others with respect, a calling to protect your friends, your congregants, your flock, a calling to remind people to help others, a calling to give voice to those who cannot speak for themselves, a calling to be kind and to inspire, and a calling to work for compassion and justice. Rabbi Fred Guttman has that calling. Please welcome the 2022 Distinguished Alumnus of the Year from the class of 1970, my brother, Rabbi Fred Guttman.
Thank you, Gary. Later on, you'll tell me who you were talking about. This is an incredible honor. I want to also welcome my son here, Yoav. He is not a graduate of MBA. We raised our family in North Carolina, but it's wonderful. He's about to become a dad for the first time, and that's a big thing in our family. This is an incredible honor. First, it's always, by the way, it's good to see you, Gordon. It really is. I feel the warmth of your presence here. This is an honor which really caught me totally by surprise, and is one that is historically, as far as MBA is concerned, rather groundbreaking. You see, I do believe that I'm the first Jewish alumnus to receive an award here. I have a lot of memories of my time at MBA. My fondest memories, actually, I recall today, were with the chorus led by Greg Colson. My classmate Edwin Milam served as the accompanist for that. I just want to mention that none of these young men bring that back to me, but I also remembered the fact that I probably, because of Greg Colson, he was the choir director at St. George's, I probably know more Christian Christmas songs by heart than most rabbis do because of that. Chestnuts roasting on an open fire. I'm glad to see that MBA is continuing with the course. I'm not sure that they were better than us, but I know that when I looked at our course, we had a hell of a lot of fun. It was just wonderful. I also want to mention here that my education here was outstanding. In my career, I've probably given somewhere around 2,000 sermons, written more than 200 articles, and while I did not learn everything here about my writing style, I do believe that a certain amount of the writing style came from MBA, particularly from the English department and Mrs. Lowry. However, I must admit that being here as a Jewish student was not always good. At the time I went to MBA, I think I was one of the first 10 Jewish students here. Wally Kuhn and I were the only Jews in our graduating class. Everyone, when we were here, was very friendly during the week. However, on the weekends, Wally and I were never invited to social events. There were 2 fraternities here at that time, and none of them had any Jewish members. Unfortunately, there were times when studying in Wallace Hall. This is Wallace, isn't it? It doesn't look like the same. This isn't it? Oh, this is where it was. Oh, blessed memory. I was sitting in study hall and people were throwing pennies at me. They were throwing pennies at me from behind and urging me, pick up the penny, Jew. There was other anti-Semitic incidents here as well during my time here, but so a few comments are in order. First of all, when it came to overt anti-Semitic acts, Wally's, or for that matter, Wally's and my exclusion from weekend social events, most of my fellow classmates were bystanders. No one raised their voice. No one raised their voice to say that social exclusion was not only wrong, but it was also anti-Semitic. The second comment that I'd like to make concerning this is just how far this school has come since I learned here. I spent 6 or 7 hours here yesterday teaching and relating to students and was extraordinarily impressed. I really thank you for that extraordinary opportunity. I'm proud of the fact that when I look at literature from here, I see that the school, the sports teams, the coaching staff, the cheerleading squad, this is a multiracial school, a multi-ethnic school. And I hope that anti-Semitism and bigotry are much less now at MBA than they were when I was here. And certainly after yesterday, that is my impression. And I have to tell you that walking in here, there were 2 things that struck me. One is just that this building over here apparently was built in 350 BC, okay? I didn't remember it even being there. And the other thing that quite frankly struck me was this. There was no menorah, Hanukkah menorah, candelabra in the school when I was here? There wasn't. And I thank you for that. I really do. And I thank you on behalf of all of the Jewish kids who go here. The irony of all of this is that when I went to MBA, I felt a certain exclusion here at school, but not so much on the outside. And now, in our time, the reverse, Brad, seems to be true. A Jewish or a minority student here today will probably feel accepted when this in the school, yet to a certain extent can feel bigotry outside of these hallowed walls. A year ago, I could have never imagined coming to MBA to make a speech such as this one. And in addition, a year ago, I could have never thought that in such a speech I would need to share with you, as not only as graduates, but as leaders of this community, I needed to share with you just how I am concerned, how much I'm concerned about the increase in anti-Semitism in our society, and in particular, and in general, how much I'm concerned about the increase of bigotry and hate. This is some of the things I shared with the student body yesterday. So specifically, anti-Semitism is on the increase. In 2021, there was a 34% increase, the highest number in the last 50 years. The Jewish population in the United States is only 2.4%, and yet 63% of all religiously oriented hate crimes or violent extremism incidents are against Jews in our country. In addition, there's a lot of online hate, not only in the form of anti-Semitism, but also hatred against minorities, immigrants, Asians, and African Americans, and of course LGBTQ people. This past few years have been very difficult as far as the Jewish community in the United States is concerned. In 2017, reactionary white nationalists marched in Charlottesville shouting, "Jews will not replace us." And the actual part of this is something called the Great Replacement Theory, which says that Jewish people desire to replace white people, particularly white leadership, with black and brown people and immigrants in our country. In 2018, on a Sabbath morning service, I was informed by an usher that there had been a terrible shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. 11 Jews at their services would be savagely murdered by that shooting. This past year in Greensboro, North Carolina, where I live, anti-Semitic flyers were thrown on the driveway of residences on a Saturday morning. The flyers accused Jews not only of the Great Replacement Theory, but also of being the cause of COVID. In August and September, as the academic year was beginning in colleges and universities, there were numerous anti-Semitic acts this year, including the egging of Hillel houses in Jewish fraternities and the painting of anti-Semitic graffiti on college campuses. In various places, Jews, particularly Orthodox Jews, have been assaulted. On last Halloween, there were numerous sightings of people who dressed up as Adolf Hitler. And this past Saturday in New York City, 2 men were arrested. They were carrying a gun, ammunition, an 8-inch knife, and a swastika armband. According to police, the pair were en route to carry out a massacre at a synagogue. More recently as well, Iranian leaders have blamed the current unrest in their country on Jews. Quite frankly, folks, American Jews do feel threatened right now. We are a community that lost 1 out of every 3 Jews in the Nazi Holocaust. Among them were 1.5 million children. For us, anti-Semitism is not a crisis, it is a state of emergency. In our opinion, it's not just a Jewish issue, but it is a sign of societal decay. Recently, Kanye West made anti-Semitic statements and comments about Jews, which unleashed a torrent of anti-Semitism online and in the media. And you might know that Kanye was also promoting Adidas. Well, what happened with Adidas? Adidas had a promotional contract with Kanye, and Adidas refused to react. But there was a lot of pressure, including a petition from 20,000 Americans. And during that time, Adidas' stock dropped a precipitous 24%. Eventually, the shoe manufacturer terminated its relationship with Kanye, and they announced that they would no longer do business with bigots. But it did not stop there. Brooklyn Nets star Kyrie Irving recommended on Instagram and Twitter to millions of his followers, there's something like 21 million followers, that they should view an anti-Semitic movie which contained horrible lies against Jews. According to the film, it was Jews, not Arab or European Christian slavers and slave traders. It was Jews who were responsible for the transatlantic slave trade. And in addition, the film that Kyrie Irving recommended asserted that the Nazi Holocaust never happened. Let there be no doubt, my friends. Anyone who denies or distorts what happened during the Nazi Holocaust is guilty of being anti-Semitic. And to make matters worse, sadly on Saturday night, I think 2 weeks ago, the comedian Dave Chappelle made fun of these anti-Semitic rantings in a way that was offensive to most people of the Jewish community. This is what is going on. Friends, after the Holocaust, the words never again were frequently heard. Today, for American Jews, never is now. And here's where MBA and you can come in with a significant role to play. Solidarity and togetherness are of critical importance. Together, let us stand against bigotry and hate in all of its forms. You can do this in several ways, but let me give you 2 examples. First, speak out on your own and call out hate wherever it happens. Do not be afraid to call out hate, particularly those young people back there. Do not be afraid to call out hate online and in the media. And I know it can be awkward when it comes to our friends. My dear friends, this is not an issue of right versus left or left versus right or Democrat versus Republican or Republican versus a Democrat. This, my friends, is an issue of right versus wrong. Second thing you can do is be aware. Combating hate begins with self-awareness. And it begins with love. When confronted with the forces of hate, be prepared to assert yourself in all of your goodness as an ally and be prepared to push back. We cannot, for the sake of humanity, we cannot remain silent. Edmund Burke's powerful truth has been ringing in my ears throughout this past year. Edmund Burke said, "All that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing." Congressman John Lewis once stated, "I believe in freedom of speech, but I also believe that we have an obligation to condemn speech that is racist, bigoted, anti-Semitic, or hateful." In my opinion, the Holocaust, including Elie Wiesel's book Night, is an important subject that needs to be taught in high schools. I'm glad that I had an opportunity to share my interpretation of Night with the 8th grade yesterday that had read the book. Elie Wiesel is a Romanian-born American writer, professor, Nobel laureate, and Holocaust survivor. And one thing that he wrote that is so relevant now is the opposite of love is not hate, it is indifference. Anti-Semitic lies and ranting and the hatred against minorities cannot be left unchallenged. Much of my career has been spent teaching. I've got an advanced degree in education with a specialty in education leadership. I've been involved in curriculum development for more than 40 years. My main area of focus has been Holocaust education. Currently, I'm working with even though I'm retired, I'm enjoying it. I'm working with the North Carolina Holocaust Council in improving Holocaust-oriented curriculum in our high schools. This summer, I will be taking 40 public and private school teachers to Poland to learn about the Holocaust and improve their own personal curriculum. And I'm hoping, as we talked yesterday, to take 1 or 2 teachers from MBA. Yesterday was quite a day for me. I had the real privilege of speaking with and teaching boys here for 6 or 7 hours. I think Lee asked me, what do you need to teach 6 or 7 hours? And I said, a bathroom, lunch, and Diet Dr. Pepper. It was great, though. because it was an opportunity for me to get to know the school as it is today. As it is today. The theme in everything that I did was the need to become an upstander and not be a bystander. I gave several examples of people who had chosen not to be bystanders during the Holocaust. I encouraged the students to take the inspiration of such people, be they Jews or non-Jews, and become upstanders. The Jewish people are really quite bound by tradition, as is this school. Every year for more than 2,000 years on Passover, the date of the liberation of the ancient Israelites from Egypt, we hold a Passover meal called a Seder. I mention this because someone once asked me why we Jews continue to talk about what happened during the Nazi Holocaust. His point was, we should forget about it, you Jews should forget about it, and move on. I was kind of struck by what was being said to me, and my answer came out in the following way. I said, 3,000 plus years ago, a wicked Pharaoh tried to kill our sons. We haven't forgot that yet. What makes you think that after 80 years since Jews were slaughtered in gas chambers, that we could just simply forget that and move on? I mention this because there is a similar deeply held, but not as old, tradition here at MBA. It is the tradition of gentleman, scholar, and athlete. Now, I doubt that such a tradition will ever be changed. Nevertheless, in my mind, I undertook a strictly intellectual exercise. And I'd like to say that as a result of that exercise, I thought that 2 words ought to be added to gentleman, scholar, and athlete. The first is kind. I want the graduates of this school to come out with a sense that they must be kind and they must be compassionate to all human beings. To all. I truly believe that when we are compassionate to one another, we are bringing more of God's presence into our midst. And the second word that I'd want added to this in my mind, of course it'll never happen, but that's okay, would be the word upstander. Gentleman, scholar, athlete, kind, upstander. We've seen that hateful and ignorant words can lead to violence, especially when good people do not use their voices to push back. It's all on us, all of us, to be part of the solution. I'd like to once again stress that I could have never imagined a year ago receiving such a prestigious award, but more than that, I could have not imagined that in doing so there would be such an urgent need to speak out specifically against anti-Semitism in particular and bigotry in general. I'd like to once again thank you for this incredible honor, and also to thank you for listening to me. All of these years, after all these years, it's such a wonderful experience to come back to the school and to see not only how much it's grown in terms of the buildings on campus, but how much this school has grown in terms of character, how much this school has grown in terms of diversity, how much it's grown in terms of inclusion, how much it's grown to dedication to the arts. But above all, how much it has grown in terms of being committed to creating students who are not afraid to stand up and to let their voices be heard when confronting bias, bigotry, racism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, hate in any form. So I'd like to thank you, Brad, and I'd like to thank the school and all those who chose me for this award, and I hope that my frank and sincere words will be appreciated. It's my hope that Montgomery Bell Academy will continue to flourish and continue not only to educate young men who attend here, but through them to create future leaders who are dedicated to excellence, leaders who are dedicated to compassion, and leaders who are dedicated to justice. As we approach Thanksgiving tomorrow, I'm hoping that we'll all be blessed with a holiday of peace, love, compassion, and understanding. I hope that God will help us to understand that Thanksgiving is not only about being grateful, giving thanks, but also about giving to those who are less fortunate, those who are in need. Once again, my dear friends, thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for this incredible honor.
I remember when Gordon Pierman was speaking at school one time, he commented that when he was at MBA, 1969, he graduated, that he rarely, if ever, heard the word love. And after Gordon finished, I got up and I said, well, Gordon, and I said this to the crowd, I think, as well, we do hear that word a lot. In fact, one of the reasons why our football coach, Marty Uverard, thinks this team is so good is because, he says, they love one another. And that he tries to project that notion of love, with them every day and with one another. And it does really foster such goodness, to talk about love. And I heard Rabbi Guttman's comments about adding to the gentleman scholar athlete yesterday. I commented to him, as I did to people who come up to me and say, well, we got to add artist, or we got to add whatever word. And I always say, if I can find the ways to enlarge the notion of a gentleman, that can do it. And simplicity is important. And so I hope MBA always thinks that dimensionally and fully. And you'd be pleased to know there are a lot of our boys go to bar mitzvahs all the time, and I love the rabbis who tell me they're the best behaved audience in Nashville, or congregational group. And after I went through one of my bouts with cancer, they asked me to speak at the temple at Yom Kippur as the main speaker about kind of what I learned in the journey and how I understood the world and myself and others. So, I've had an affinity, not to mention I had a Jewish grandmother. But having said all that, happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for being here this morning. Go enjoy the football practice if you wish, and hope you and your families have a wonderful holiday. Thank you.